So if you do have any questions during the session, just raise your hands. Otherwise, just in the interests of not interrupting, if you keep your meeting screens on mute while somebody's speaking, then that would be much appreciated. So let's get underway. And the first thing on the agenda today is apologies. We have 2 apologies today, one from Diane Holmes and the other from Max Lee. So can I ask that somebody move that we accept these apologies, please?
I'll make that.
Thank you, Mary. And a seconder?
Aye.
Lovely, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Okay, so that's carried. Leaves of absence, there were no leaves of absence, so we'll move on from that. Can I ask if anybody has any conflicts of interest in relation to today's agenda? No, perfect, thank you. And we've already established that we don't have anybody to speak in public forum this time around. I'm not aware of any extraordinary or urgent items unless anybody would like to correct me on that. No.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. And so the next thing we need to do is confirm the minutes from the last meeting. So those were that was the meeting that we held on the 26th of February, which seems a very long time ago now. Can I ask that somebody move that the minutes are correct from the last meeting, please? Thank you, Mary. Do I have a seconder, please? Somebody to second? Thanks, Ben. Okay, so all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so they are recorded as a true and correct record. I did just want to pick up one thing out of those minutes, and that was on page 15. The board requested an update on the flag tracks project. Do we have any staff members? Simon, are you able to comment on that, please?
No, I have not recently. I caught up with Greg some time ago now, and he was still in discussions with the guy who manufactures the brackets, because who was coming up to Tiano to have a look, because I think the poles that they would go on aren't standard, and he needed to make sure that he had all of the right brackets for it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been worth providing them. So I'm not sure whether that was intended to happen a couple of months ago, just before the shutdown. So we can follow up on that.
Okay, all right. If I could leave that with you, that would be great. I also note just under there, the board had agreed to write to NZTA regarding the maintenance of the edge of the road, which is near the water park. That letter is in draft, but it hasn't actually gone to NZTA as yet. So I'll undertake to get that completed. All right, so if we can move on to the community leadership report, which is on page 19. Simon, are you going to talk to this?
Yes, thank you. This report is, as you will have noted from reading through it, was prepared a wee while ago, but a lot of the information is still relevant. The Community Partnership Fund, so you've got a report at the end, which Megan is going to go through. The community board plans, you've had the meetings with the public around that. I believe that went pretty well, and some good feedback. And certainly I think it has been a bit of a template in terms of how the plan itself has been produced from the comms team for some of the boards around the area. So you guys have led on that one, and it's been really really positive, I think. and also appreciate the opportunity that was given to the other chairs to also attend, should they have wished to, the public meeting to see how your board has or how this board has gone about things. So that was really useful. There's some interesting links in there in terms of the community-led, under the community wellbeings stuff, and I think obviously through COVID-19 we've seen this community really step up as well, in terms of both through the flooding, I guess, as a practice run, albeit for real, and then through COVID. So I think that's taking some major steps forward, and obviously Sarah and Councillor Kramer can talk more about specifically what's been done in the area. I probably don't have, I'm just sort of scrolling through. There's a few things around the long-term plan and the bylaws and stuff, but that's really just for information at this stage. So unless there's any questions, we'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Are there any questions for Simon on this report, please? No? Okay, so I move then that we receive the report titled Community Leadership Report for Fiordland Community Board. And can I have somebody move that we receive the report, please? Okay, Ryan, I'll take you. You move and Mary second.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, there was just one thing there, Sarah, on page 22 of the report, the worker
Yes.
accommodation. I think that may be resolved now because of all the Airbnbs. I think they'll start renting them out when they can.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree that we're probably not going to have the same worker accommodation issue moving forwards that we have had previously. I think there are probably a raft of other issues that will present themselves. I think the main thing is that as a board, we've agreed that the housing feasibility study should, the housing feasibility report would continue, and that we do progress with that project, particularly as it contains elements of social and emergency housing, which may become a priority over and above the other types of accommodation that we were intending to look at.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it's a good point too in terms of some of the things in there around the climate change. In the restart or the recovery phase, it's easy to look at those sort of short-term wins that you can get, but I think it's what's in here is still equally important, and what's in your community board plan in terms about looking at sort of medium and long-term aspect as well. That that should, well, now is the perfect opportunity to keep that front and centre, albeit that we want to get some things underway quickly.
Yeah, I'd totally agree with that. I think that through this past 8 weeks, through the lockdown period, we have revisited our community futures plan and looked at what's on it, and certainly that plan is still fit for purpose. And I think that's actually really encouraging for us as a board, in that we don't have to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. It may be that we need to change some priorities, but that plan is absolutely fit for purpose. And in many ways, with the restart, we have an opportunity to really have a blank canvas to work from. In any plan that's community led, you need the community on your side, and therefore, with a complete restart, I think there would many members of our community are going to be very open-minded about how we support and enable that process to happen. So we'll watch this space. We just need now to really take that plan and start to really get the ideas into something that's more operational. Okay, were there any other comments or questions? Okay, so talking about things operational, can we move on to the operational report, which is on page 25? I'm not sure can I find out, please, who's planning to present the report? Rex, is that you?
I believe Simon's going to present that report, Madam Chair.
Okay, so thank you, Simon.
So being the operational report, I will leave it to speak for itself. If there are any questions, I'm not sure whether we're certainly encouraging boards to get in touch with the appropriate activity managers before the meetings, so that there's a chance to have those answered. But if there's anything that comes out of that report that you'd like me to find out, then certainly we can do so this time.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on the report then, please?
Yes, I have, Madam Chair, through you. I just note that on page 27, Tiana Airport, and I see there that project current comment are waiting from approval from Evan Pearce. Evan Pearce no longer works for us, so therefore that is that's somewhat outdated, I would think. So just have to be mindful of what we've got written in our reports, that the information is 100% accurate and up to date.
I did note that the figures in this report appear to still be the 29th of February because it was prepared for our April meeting.
Yeah.
So all we do need to bear in mind, all the figures from page 32, certainly through to 34, are probably still as at 29th February.
Correct, because I was just going to follow on from that as well, and you got it spot on. They're outdated.
Does anybody else have any queries before I make any other comment? No. I did just want to look at a couple of these, the wastewater thing, particularly the power to Takatimu. Can I just clarify that that some of the expenditure on here is is just related to Fiordland, that it's not necessarily related to our reserves. I just want that clarified.
What page on?
Sorry, I'm on page 28. It's wastewater, provide power to Takatimu Reservoir. Abel, you and I discussed this. I'm just trying to clarify whether this is included or not included, or whether this report pertains to activity in our area that's not necessarily coming out of our budgets.
It's an activity within the community board area that is not part of the community board reserves, but rather it is the Tiana water scheme, which
rural water scheme.
Rural water scheme. So that's what it relates to. I also got that clarified at the previous council meeting, which we made some changes, because it also made the same reference. And I got some changes made there to ensure that it reflected the exact and appropriate budget.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just, it's interesting just looking at the report. It may be just for clarity's sake that we understand where some of these projects, where the expenditure is coming from, not necessarily just what the project is, so that we know that there's no errors in here.
Yeah, and if it's noted also that in future we'll make sure that the appropriate reference to the appropriate line, budget line, is clearly identified. So.
Yeah, because that would also apply on page 29 to the renewal of the Kakapo scheme.
Correct, absolutely right.
Yep. Okay. Does anybody have any other queries on this report then? I think the rest of it's fairly self-explanatory. The numbers are definitely out of date now. So I think it'll be interesting if we can accept this report as it is, and then we'll look for something more up to date on our 1st of July meeting. Okay, can I have somebody move that we receive the report then, please? Somebody raise their hand. Thank you, Abel. And a seconder. Thanks, Mary. Okay, all in favour, please say yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So that's carried. So next we have the council report, and I think that's back to you as well then, Simon, please.
I think this one's for Councillor Kramer.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Simon.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Right.
That's all good. Yeah, I'll take the report as read, but also I'll certainly identify some highlights. The three waters, you'll know that ever since the Havelock North incident, central government certainly focused on our three waters. And they're also looking at a greater collaboration between various councils. And to that end, the Otago Mayoral Forum has initiated some discussions amongst other councillors, and to see whether we can actually start working across the region with regards to our three waters. So the government are certainly very keen to see us in a collaborative approach, looking at that at those three waters. And I'm sure there will be appropriate legislation that will come out that will support that as well. With regards to the community and futures policy and bylaw updates, there are a number of bylaws that are being reviewed at this stage. One that will be of interest to this community board, and particularly speed limit bylaws. If you just bear with me for a moment, if I can get it on, I'll just revert back to the council meeting that's going to occur next week. Just give me a minute, I'll just get that up. And within that, we have a speed limit bylaws to be discussed, which is in the open section of the council meeting. And I'll just refer to you some of those. Right, the Centre Hill Road, the current speed limit is 100 k's, proposed was 60. There was a lot of submissions put forward, and we're now looking at 80 k's rather than the 60. Now, Mavora Lakes, Mount Nicholas, Borland Lodge, Lake Monowai, Lilburn Valley, Takatumia Hudlin Road are all going to be at 80 k's, currently all at 100k speed limit. And it was proposed that all these roads would have a speed limit of 60, but as a receipt of submissions and some robust discussions around the council table, they're all going to be at 80 k's per hour. The Te Anau Terrace submissions were received to have this road reduced from 50 to 30 k's. So that's what's been presented. The DU Park Road, 80s down to 60 k's. And Sandy, I'll just find it. Sandy Brown Road, current speed limit is 80 k's. Proposed speed limit to be at 60 k's. Now, there were a lot of submitters that suggested it should be 50 k's, but there is a proposal for that to be at 60 k's. I would like to get some feedback from your community board, Madam Chair, as to whether there's still a desire to have that particular road, Sandy Brown Road, to go down to 50 rather than 60. So it'd be good to get feedback from this community board as well, so I can take that to council tomorrow, because we have a full council meeting tomorrow in Invercargill.
Just,
So-
yeah, I was just going to, before we open it up, could you just tell us what the proposal is for Oraka, please?
Yeah.
50, I believe. Yeah, 50 Ks.
50.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if
All
I
right,
carry
mate.
on, should I carry on with my report and then open up for discussion at the end?
Okay, yes, that's fine.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll just get back on my right page. I just had to skip back into
Yeah, no, that's
the
fine.
community board document. Also, the combined alcohol policy is also being looked at, and we're in discussion with the Invercargill City Council so that we get some contingency or some similarities between both councils with regards to the alcohol policies. We're looking at our procurement policy, and that's being looked at so that we have some greater opportunities to achieve efficiencies and savings as to how we purchase our goods and services. So that'll be a significant piece of policy that we really need to have a look at. Community Futures Research, number 33. The Community Futures team are certainly looking at identifying priorities for investing in community futures planning. Has included socio-demographics, climate changes, level of services that's being provided, rating affordability, land and water plan implications, community assistance and funding, to name just a few. So there's quite a significant amount of work being done within that strategy team. The annual report, just waiting for audit dates for that to progress. Environmental services, now in section number 40. MB have indicated a desire that they're going to visit council and review our earthquake-prone buildings and see how that process is occurring and see what progress is being made. Resource management, there's ongoing work there within the regional work stream, looking at climate change, biodiversity, landscapes and natural characters. So there's quite a bit of work being undertaken there as well. Forestry, section 57. We certainly had some concern around the council table with regards to our forestry investment and the impact Code 19 has had and the effects on China, and we have been advised that the volume prices are looking still good for us, and it must be remembered that we're putting in about between 900,000 and $1 million a year from that forestry business that goes into council's budget, and it is used for supporting ratepayers' rates. So that gives us an opportunity to manage our rates down by making sure that we utilise any surplus from the forestry business arm that we can utilise for that. Around the mountain cycle trail with the recent floods, there's certainly been quite a bit of damage done on that trail, but repair work is being looked at and will be implemented reasonably quickly. The Town of Marapore Airport Part 139 certification, there was a lot of work done on previously, and we're just doing a bit of an overview to see what else needs to be done there. That's probably the key comments I would like to make, and certainly open it up for any questions that I myself or even the staff may be able to help with. Mary.
Hi, Abel. Just getting back to Sandy Brown Road being at 60 kilometres an hour.
Yep.
Can we still have a pedestrian crossing for the people that live in Alpine Terrace if it's a 60 kilometre? Does it have to be 50 kilometre for a pedestrian crossing?
I know that I'll probably hand this over to Hartley, but there is very strict criteria as to where you can place a crossing or not. But Hartley, you're probably better in answering that question for us.
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. In terms of, Councillor Kramer's correct, there's a strict assessment around pedestrian crossings, and it looks at traffic volumes, the number of users, and part of that assessment looks at how long you'd also have to wait in order to cross. And as things stand at Sandy Brown Road, we have looked into it, but it doesn't meet the criteria around permanent pedestrian crossing as such. We could look at options like a courtesy crossing, but not a formal pedestrian crossing. Yeah, there's very strict criteria around that.
Just looking at the cost we're talking about, would that be the one that we've got from the fire brigade over to the medical centre on the main road, like a preferred crossing?
Testing my mirror, I think that's more like a courtesy crossing where you've got the divider in the middle. Same one I'm thinking of. Yeah, so that's not a pedestrian crossing. The pedestrian crossing is the one on, like at the roundabout in town, where you've got the formal zebra stripes and the Belisha discs. So that's a formal pedestrian crossing where, if by law, if you're approaching it and want to cross, vehicles have to stop. Where a courtesy crossing is just that it's up to the driver technically whether they want to stop or not. But the example on the state highway, why that would be there is because of the width of the road. So that's also another consideration. Even with formal pedestrian crossings, depending on the width of the road, you may have to put a centre island in or as a rest area for pedestrians to cross. And again, that's got to do with the timing, what time it may take somebody to cross the full width of the road.
Thank you for that.
With the population up in Alpine Terrace, does there need to be more people to make it warrant a pedestrian crossing? It's just a shame because the kids have to get drive to school because it's too dangerous for them to cross.
Yeah, I'm not, off the top of my head, I don't know where it sits. Is it a vehicle number or use versus pedestrian? Because it takes both of those into consideration. But it's something I can follow up on and see, are we short on both numbers or is it just the one number in particular? But something I'll make a note of that and follow up.
I suppose that if I can come in there, currently the speed limit is quite fast, so that certainly poses a risk for that subdivision, the people living up there. If it's reduced to 50 kilometres per hour, that would assist as well. I still realise it doesn't cover the pedestrian crossing. However, it should help eliminate or reduce that risk as well. So at the moment, there's a recommendation that it's 60, I believe, and if the community board wishes me to take a different approach to council tomorrow, I'm more than happy to put that to council if you want to have 50 or leave it at 60. So a bit of feedback would be appreciated. It may help address the concerns that you have identified there.
Yeah, I think we need to provide Councillor Kramer with an indication of whether 60 is appropriate or whether we would still like him to pursue a 50-kilometre option.
Don't hold back.
I'm waiting to see what the
For
boys.
you, Hartley, sorry, through you, Sarah. If we were to go for 60 Ks on Sandybound Road, what sort of cost would it be to drop it down, say in 2-3 years, back down to 50 Ks? Is it quite a drawn out process and cost, or is it quite minimal?
When I read the report, it's not so much a cost, but I do believe the report does indicate that it would not be reviewed for another 5 years. I believe that's
Right,
correct,
okay.
Hartley?
Thanks,
Yeah, that's correct. We'd look at reviewing in 5 years' time. Things, I'll put false hope out there, but things do change across the network. So if there's a real compelling reason why we should review a portion of the bylaw or the bylaw as a whole, that can be done. But to give you a bit of an example, the speed limit bylaws must be nearing 12 months now since we started the process. So it is a very timely process. And that obviously in its own has a cost implication going out consulting. But yeah, we'll look at reviewing it in 5 years' time. One of the reasons for the suppose the 50, 60. The 60 comes from a technical assessment around national guidelines on how speed limits are assessed, and that's how the 60 comes out. But then you go to public consultation and gather feedback from particular groups, community as a whole, but also there's legislatively, there's key stakeholders that need to be engaged, the AA, NZTA, etc., that are actually set out in the legislation. And that's all gets taken into account for setting of the speed limits. One of the aspects around setting speed limits is that the speed itself, people need to be mindful of not just purely changing the speed limit. It's actually, does the environment also encourage that reduction in speed limit? And if it doesn't, then what else should we be putting in place to help promote that reduced speed limit? I'll use the town centre as an example that's under 30. One of the reasons we can get away with it is because of the feel and look and nature of the centre of town, with trees, the narrower roads or streets. It all lends itself to people travelling at 30 rather than your 50. So that's another consideration around that.
I'd like to remind. I'd like to remind the board as well that in our original submission, we did actually ask for it to be 50 kilometres an hour as opposed to 60 kilometres an hour. And that was for the reasons that Mary has outlined, in particular safety, and also because of the number of pedestrians that are actually using Sandy Brown Road as a walking area as well. So are we still of the same opinion that Sandy Brown Road should be 50 kilometres an hour? And is that something that we want Councillor Kramer to take to the table tomorrow?
Right.
I'd
I'd vote for 50. If 60 was all we could get, and it would be somewhat satisfactory for now. But if we can push for 50, I think we should definitely go for it. It's going to make a vast improvement to the safety of that road and the people that use it. So. Yeah,
and it ties in with the state highway that runs through our town as well.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got a very clear message there. So before I just finish up, I'll just identify or just bring you guys up to speed with some of the work I'll be doing personally as well. Of course, since our flooding in Milford and in Southland, of course, I did fly over the Milford Road and also the Hollyford Road on several occasions. And as you know, I'm a chair of the Guns Camp as well, and of course that's been totally devastated. There's been a lot of questions being put to me with regards to the Hollyford Road. I flew over the road with NZTA, senior council staff and myself, and had a good look at that road and see what may be possible. Our position has been that the road in future would only go as far as Lake Marion car park, and beyond that could either be a cycle track or a walking track, but certainly anything beyond that, the damage to the road is significant. The risk to further damage to the road is also significant. There's been large slips all the way along that road, and there's a huge amount of material that's still just sitting above the road from the slips that hasn't come down yet. So even if we were to fix the road, the ongoing cost of maintaining that road and the risks associated with that road are now so significant that we thought it was far wiser, and for health and safety and for people using that road, that not to continue to maintain that particular road. So we're going through a process as to where that may land, but that's certainly the position of NZTA, it's the position of Southern District Council. Myself as chair of the Guns Camp, we've had some discussions with my trust, and we can also see there's absolute logic and only going as far as the Lake Marion car park. So disappointing as it is, but that's where that particular issue is. Ongoing weekly emergency management civil defence meeting with Sarah. and also with the Fiordland community communication structure that I put together. That's also being Zoomed on a weekly basis, and certainly acknowledge Sarah's significant involvement and input there in leading that. So that's been exceptionally well done. Mayoral Forums on a regular basis with ICC, Southern District Council Gore, and also Environment Southern. So accompany Mayor Tong on those forums, and we've also had a couple of Mayoral Forums from Dunedin South, just to see how we can help each other with regards to COVID-19, in particular, the significant impact on Lakes District, in particular, Queenstown. Milford Opportunities, that's taken the next step, looking at a number of the projects, and I'm on the Tourism and Business project, and also on the Statutory and Asset Management project, as is your chair as well. We had council meetings via the Zoom, Service and Assets Committees as well, and Finance and Assurance Zoom meetings. I'm still doing quite a bit of work with the Milford Community Trust to see if we can still get that rec facility established in Milford. I've had quite a bit of involvement with working with Matt and Steve and the consultants with regards to the Town of Waste Water project, in particular to see what savings can be made and ensuring we have the final design and scope of the project clearly identified, well planned out, well budgeted for, so we don't get any more surprises. So we certainly had a significant workshop with council, and I've been slowly working away with senior management to look at that. You may have noticed last night I've put an open invitation to our communities on the Fiordland Community Board page, and also on the Town Information page, as I wish to set up an ideas forum. So you might have seen that, so that we can look at how we get economic recovery for Fiordland. I've been wanting to do this some weeks ago, but the timing just wasn't right. But now, after further discussion with a number of people within the township and Manapori, we believe now is probably an appropriate time to kickstart this again. So really, it's about getting some ideas of what we may be able to do here in Fiordland, and then there'll be a second phase and trying to get like-minded people together, and the enablers saying, right, how can we make these ideas happen? If it involves, for example, Dock Estate, Fiordland National Park, let's get Dock around the table, let's talk to them and see if we can work together to implement some of the ideas that may come to the table in that first ideas forum. So I've had good response already over the last 12, 14 hours. So there seems to be good support, and there's been a number of people already put their hands up and saying they'd like to be involved. So if you're talking to anybody, let them know that that's what I'm setting up at the moment. And it's just another way of coming up with ideas how we can promote Te Anau Fiordland as a destination. I do note that RJs have made some statements in the last 24 hours about their business, but we can still promote Te Anau as a destination, and the drive between here and Milford Sound is unique. May not be a lot of activity in Milford Sound itself, but there's more to Fiordland and Te Anau than just Milford Sound. So it's part of that process. I'm trying to get some good ideas and see how we can promote Te Anau as a destination, and just not solely rely on international travellers, but look at our domestic market and see how we can help as best as we can. So I think the timing's right. We've heard from the government. We know what's coming. We know what's around the corner. So let's try and pull some of this together. And I know that there's been a number of tourist companies already that have sort of got themselves together, come up with some ideas, package plans. So they've already started that, and I'm just trying to see how I can expand that and really get that thread going throughout all our businesses. Open for questions, discussion. I hope that's been useful to give you a bit of a heads up as what I've been up to over the last few months as well.
No, that's
Questions?
great. Thank you, Abel. Has anybody got any questions for Abel?
Abel, just on the Hollyford section, you've had a really good look down there. Just from a search and rescue point of view, are they still able to get jet boats in there just to do that top half of the river before the falls if they need to?
The river at the end of the road, we used to be able to launch jet boats.
Yeah.
Yep. I've done that a fair bit myself, but unfortunately that area is totally changed. The river now is probably a good 30 meters plus further over to the right hand side. If you're standing on the road, it's about 30 meters back towards where the river used to be. So, and there's huge boulders, massive logs. You wouldn't get a jet boat down there, unfortunately. So I think the jet boating down there days are probably gone, and if you did take it down there, the risk would be significant.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Anybody else got any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Abel. Certainly acknowledge all the work that you've been doing as well over the past 8 weeks and even prior to that. I think 2020 so far has been pretty relentless from a workload perspective for quite a number of people, and we've obviously got some challenges ahead as well.
Thank you.
Could I ask then that somebody move that we receive the report, please?
I'll do that, Sarah.
Thank you, Mary. And a seconder?
Aye.
Thanks, Ryan. All in favour, please say yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that brings us on to the chair's report, which is my report. Again, I'd also reiterate the past few, not only weeks, but months have been exceptionally busy. So my report covers quite a significant period of time from the end of February right the way through to mid-May when the report was submitted. So some of these areas you will already be aware of, but and matters are progressing. So firstly, the Manapori Pool. We do have an item on this on the agenda later. Manapori Pool Committee are progressing obtaining charitable status, charitable trust status rather. So that looks at like that project is progressing as intended. You'll all be aware as well that I did quite a bit of work around the civil defence emergency and the flooding as well. There was a number of both economic recovery meetings, NZTA meetings, and regular updates on the Milford Road. And I also was able to join EMS flying into Milford Sound, particularly in terms of that community liaison piece and just making sure that the community were kept updated and listening to the concerns as well. We have continued to make operators aware that the Mayoral Relief Fund is still open. I'm not aware of any round of recent reviews of that, or even if there have been actual requests for funds from that source in the last month or so. But it is still open for any of you that are aware of anybody that might need to access it. Very pleasing to see that both the road and the tracks will receive funding from central government. So I believe the figure is 13.73 million to make sure that both the road and some of our great walks are attended to in due course, so that will continue to provide activities for visitors to actually do. And it's obviously one of the main reasons that people visit here as well. Community Futures Plan, I've already mentioned. I think the only additional thing I'd like to say on that is that, it's all very well now having ideas on paper and the plan, the next stage is execution, and we need to operationalise this. And I'm very keen to make sure we get that started as soon as possible. We've got a number of ideas that that can now be prioritised, and I know we've got our workshop next week in terms of the LTP discussion. So I'm very keen to start actually getting some traction on this. Again, I went to the Chairs Forum in Invercargill. That was the day that the first case of COVID-19 was identified in Invercargill. It does seem a very long time ago now. Our housing feasibility study is still progressing, and we've got the Community Partnership Fund on our agenda today, so I won't go into that much more. Fiordland Community Garden is also progressing as well, so there was the consultation. We are still waiting for a report on this, but it's been pleasing to see that you know, we have actually had some or a submission from a disability group who's very much in favour of assisting in terms of accessibility and ensuring that the location is accessible. But it is still dependent on a final plan being accepted by the board. And although we've seen some draft plans, we are still waiting for final approval through council of that plan. Dark skies, there was a discussion supposed to take place in March, but that got postponed due to COVID-19 as well. Again, it is in our community futures plan, so we'll see what happens with that. See, the sewage pipeline is up and running again. The team made good the road whilst we were locked down, but that's been got underway again in the last couple of weeks, which is pleasing to see. And also it's good to see that that multi-purpose track along Sandy Brown Road is actually complete and it's getting good use as well. Council facilities, obviously at the time I was writing this, things were still closed, and now we are gradually and carefully opening things in a safe way. You'll all be aware that the toilets are, the contract for the cleaning the toilets has been put out to tender, and that will work its course, and we'll see what happens moving forwards with that. Good to see that the recycling centre did open again at level 3. We did have some significant use of that, and I feel like one of our responsibilities, or between Abel and I, has also really been to, you know, provide the community with some guidelines as to how to operate, how to make sure that that COVID-19 website was the source of truth, and generally building understanding in our community of the rules and regulations that we've had to live with for the last little while. I guess as a byproduct of that, and a byproduct of the twice daily initially updates and once daily updates that we were doing, the community board Facebook page has grown quite significantly. It now has 619 likes and 671 followers, and that's a significant change from what we had in late February, when we really started using it actively and posting about the flooding. In my mind, you know, that page has become a significant success in its own right. So I'm really pleased to see that the community are following it, and it's certainly, from the feedback I've had, it's been appreciated. And in addition to that, and using that Facebook page as a vehicle for communicating with the community, we've had the community communication leadership team. So from my perspective, and I'm sure from Abel's, it's definitely become, or became certainly, a full-time 7-day-a-week job for a while. But that leadership framework did allow us to establish not only a really good structure, but it also gave guidance to a whole team of community workers who were tasked to help lead us through COVID-19 alert levels. So we have continued liaising with emergency management and with Great South. We've provided that clear, validated information. We made sure our community team was kept up to date, and that we were also keeping ourselves up to date on things like welfare issues, issues around wage subsidies, issues around migrant workers. And so I think that team has really been able to wrap itself really well around the community. We've made sure that our elderly and vulnerable have been supported through a whole heap of different networks. That has included our own volunteer coordinator, but also wrapping in the churches, and the Friends group have all had their own buddy systems working. So just being able to connect all those together and make sure everybody's on the same page. And sitting behind that, we had a regular Q&A sheet that was updating people on everything that was happening locally right the way through this. So, you know, for example, it included everything from supermarket opening to whether they could see the dentist, to where they got the hearing aid batteries, to the number of cases that were presenting themselves. So it had a whole raft of information that if you weren't online, our buddies were actually sharing that information with the people that they were outbound calling to. So that proved to be really useful as well. Community House have definitely had a significant amount of work to do during this time. They are now getting those calls from people that are being made redundant. So although there are still wage subsidy queries out there, the next round is redundancy calls. And since we went into level 3, and quite a lot of calls around what jobs might be available. So unfortunately, I don't see that there will be a huge amount of those, certainly in the near future, but certainly we'll be looking to projects that will allow economic investment into our area and thereby generate some jobs for people in the future. I've also been approached by a number of people who said, we're going to have some very talented and well-educated people here. We want to keep them in our area. We don't want them moving out of area. There's a lot of rumours going around at the moment around numbers of families that might be leaving, and also about the potential for population decrease in our area. I did circulate some information to the rest of the board. There have been no students lost from the college, and there have been a very, very tiny number of students lost from the primary school, but they've also had a gain in students as well. So the large numbers of children that we were going to lose out of our community that were being bandied around are not substantiated at this point. We now have 77 people on our migrant worker register. We know that that doesn't include everybody because there are a number of companies that have chosen not to share that information with us. But what we have been able to do is triage those people through emergency management, and they have been particularly helpful in making sure that we have been making sure we get food parcels to people or assisting them in any other way that we can. We are currently working out how, if and when emergency management step out of the picture, how we might still support that group of people. Obviously, the plan now is to look forward to a restart. I think it is preferable that it's a restart rather than a recovery. So I've been attending a number of webinars around destination management, planning for the future, et cetera, et cetera. So The events of the past 3 months have meant that it has been a really busy time. It is all about restart, and I do want to thank everybody that's been involved in making sure that, you know, the last 8 weeks or so have run as smoothly as they can. There's certainly been some very sad cases that we've had to deal with, but I think the team that we've had have been exceptional, and certainly like to thank them all. So that's my report. Has anybody got any questions?
Just, Madam Chair, on the immigrant side of things, is there any indication of possibly a report into how immigration have handled the COVID-19 situation when it comes to those immigrants that are stuck here? As I know that there was a lot of information that was given to them over the first few weeks of that initial virus turning up, that was probably somewhat misleading towards them, that, you know, almost led them down a garden path.
I'm not specifically aware of any other than kind of one-on-one assistance or one-on-one answering queries. I don't know that there's been a huge amount of support yet from immigration. I think the fact that because anybody that was on a visa that expired prior to the 9th of July, was it automatically extended to the 25th of September, and the fact that immigration weren't working during level 4, except for real emergency things, that they'll be stepping into seeing what they can do now. And I haven't had any specific update from immigration. We do have a number of people in our community that are in that boat where their visas were expiring before the 9th of July. In fact, there's quite a number of those people. There are also there's a couple of individuals who fell out of that time period and will be now looking to immigration to see if they can get their visas extended. Whether they will be supported, I think, is probably out of our remit to really take on board. I think they'll be done on a case-by-case basis.
I think possibly what I was trying to get at was the way that the information that they're supplied with in the first initial 2 weeks of COVID lockdown, as we're heading into it, it wasn't well thought through when it comes to the immigration side of things, and possibly wasn't looking towards the inevitable future of what they have left here in New Zealand as an immigrant worker coming here. So it's, and like we've seen around the districts, we've got thousands of people that don't have jobs and are literally stuck here. Queenstown being the worst out of any region, really.
I think there's also an element of different embassies reacting in different ways. And you are correct in that first couple of weeks, even prior to level 4. There was a lot of people scrambling to determine what the best course of action was. There was a lot of things that were unknown, and you know, things evolved quite quickly. And what you had on one day was, you know, the information changed almost on a daily or even hourly basis at parts of that. It's a difficult one.
It's a hard one.
It's a really difficult one. I know that some people were given the opportunity to go home or told that they should go home, and it was recommended that they did that. We certainly have a high percentage of people that opted not to do that, and they do make up residents in our community.
I think that's part of this. There's two key factors there. One is that it was such a changing environment so quickly, and I hate to use the word, but unprecedented. Nobody had dealt with this sort of situation before, and a number of government departments were certainly struggling to try and accommodate and get as much information out there as possible. Not making any excuses for them, but that was quite a task that they had. And also, as the chair has pointed out, a number of transient people that are living here or immigrants living here wanted to stay here. And you can understand why. This was a far greater safe environment than if they went home. So, there'd be some people that no doubt sort of went under the radar for a while because of that very particular reason. But, we can't leave them out in the cold. We've still got to look after them. And they've certainly served us well in the past. They've always provided very good services, been part of our community. So we still got to continue to look after them, but it's been exceptionally difficult. There wasn't an easy answer to that one.
No. I think the other thing is that we need to recognise that there are actually some quite long-term members of our community that are still here on visas. They see themselves as committed to New Zealand. Some of them may have potentially even bought houses or property because they were able to. We've certainly got some people that they've just been rolling over their visas, for 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
But the one thing that does bring home though is that if you're going to be here for that period of time, and you're making this your home, you work here, you make a capital investment, but you still retain your own nationality, which is understandable. But if you're going to be here for that sort of period of time and you're going to live here, why don't you get naturalised? Be part of New Zealand.
Be a resident.
And that's where I do struggle at times, where people have been here for a long period of time, and I used to be guilty of that, but they've been here for a very long period of time and just never got themselves naturalised. And you think to yourself, here you've got this pandemic, and all of a sudden they become very vulnerable. And you can understand why. So, nobody could predict this, but it's certainly going to bring it home to a lot of people that maybe they really need to consider what their long-term future is within Aotearoa. You're going to stay here. You're going to stay here for good. You've raised a family here. You've had your children here. You've made an investment here. You've got a career here. What's the next phase? What's the next step?
Yeah, exactly.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments?
If I can just duck in, Madam Chair, Gary Tom. I was just going to say a few things at the end of the reports, and I've now got quite a list, but I'll keep it brief. My number one was Chair Graney and Councillor Kramer. You're underestimated what you've done over the last few weeks. The work has been exceptional. The leadership and the control has been outstanding. It's been commented on by Minister Hanari and even the Prime Minister and the Director, Sarah Stewart-Black. So what you've done is commendable, and I certainly say thank you on behalf of not only the community in Te Anau, Fiordland, but your neighbours, because you've kept that communication going wide, especially right down to Angus and his team in Invercargill. So top marks there. I don't want to dwell on the last few months, but we've got to remain positive. Someone said to me the other day, 2020 BC, we won't see that again. 2020 before COVID, and we've touched on it here today that the changes are going to be massive. The changes not only in the Fiordland area, but all of Southland, all of New Zealand, all of the world. And you've already heard Councillor Kramer commented on the changes at the top end of the Hollyford down there at the falls. Just incredible change that we've seen, not only in our environment, but culturally, socially, and of course with our businesses, with the economy that we've got to step through over the next few months. Just taking some notes from the meeting here, please don't lose sight of your housing situation. You are going to get that housing problem come back. Let's be positive on that. We've got Anna Stevens, who's working on some of this housing stuff. So I'll connect you with Anna. She's only been in the role, I think, 2 weeks before we went into lockdown. So I know she wants to catch up with everybody. The Department of Conservation, with those dollars they're going to put into the area, I know you've already commented on that. I know you keep your ideas going on that one, and talking about ideas, there's ideas for them, Abel. That's bloody fantastic. Good to see and hear. What else did I touch on here? Oh, Councillor Crane has updated you on the Tiana wastewater and all that stuff, the airport and Milford Ops. You may have heard in the on the grapevine just in the last couple of days that the Haast-Hollyford Highway might be back on the radar. I was asked for comment on it yesterday and just said there's no change in it. Somebody flew that area now, they'd realised that they need to take that off the table. But just to let you know that apparently Durham Havel and others on the west coast may be trying to start that again. I made a comment to the media yesterday that the Fiordland area has only just been getting established and having some confidence post the tunnels and gondolas and all the other BS that was trying to be put on you guys so that you missed out on people coming through Tiana. So I can assure you that the Haast-Hollyford Highway won't help that situation. I think it's not going to happen in any of our lifetimes. Mayoral Forum, yes, there's been a number of applications. Obviously, they're all in confidential, but there have been a number of applications from your patch, and that is open to the end of June. And I think that's all I've got. Yeah, but once again, Sarah, Abel, good stuff.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. That's appreciated. Much appreciated.
Yep, thumbs up.
I'll just close this with a couple of comments. Yeah, the Haast-Hollyford did come up in discussions under the Milford Opportunities project last week. So I think there's even less likelihood of it happening now, and I would hope that remains the case. One thing I just want to comment on, and that's the tourism recovery piece, and sort of the Milford Opportunities does kind of link into that. We've talked about Tiana being a destination as opposed to just a gateway to Milford. The one thing that I would really like to ensure moving forward is that we continue to see tourism as a synergistic entity. I think I think that as we move forward with the Ideas Forum, we have to recognise the connectivity that we have with accommodation. Accommodation needs activities. Activities need accommodation. You can't do one in isolation of the other. There are certain things that happen in our area that are connected to other areas. And they need, our neighbours are supportive and supporting of some of the activities that happen here as well. I'm mindful of the fact that $400 million from central government isn't going to go an awful long way. I'm also mindful that our town and our community still has to get through the winter. But what I'd like everybody to think about as we go forward through this is tourism being a whole series of synergies, and that working together and making sure the dots are all joined along the way is really, really important. We can't just have government invest in one national identity in terms of because it's recognised nationally or internationally, or one operator. We actually need to make sure that we are considering everybody. So all aspects of tourism get considered as we look at this restart for our region. So I just want to really put that thought out there and make sure that we consider that as a board and in our destination management plan as we move forwards.
Just to follow on for that, if I may, Madam Chair, is that part of the discussions within the Milford opportunities, I think I raised it myself, was that we can't just look at Milford Town in isolation. We are part of a bigger family, and it's called the Southern District Region. And it talked about the scenic road going around the coast and how we need to link that. And then also about how we need to link our roading network from, say, above Dunedin down south, so that we just don't look at the main arteries of roading, but we look at the wider aspect as well. And that's how we start to get that connectivity that you're talking about as well. So we just don't look in isolation about Fiordland, because we are part of that bigger picture. And sure, Tianao, we mark it as a destination. It isn't just all about Milford. It's certainly helpful, but we also need to indicate to our visitors within New Zealand that there are several ways of how you can reach Tianao as a destination, and I think that's part of that bigger picture that we need to to look at.
Yeah.
So if I can just comment on that, Madam Chair, the Milford Ops is totally aware that this is about the corridor to and from. So most definitely, so that is certainly in the mix.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Cheers.
Okay, so I'll move that my report be received. Could I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Abel. All right, let's move on to page 53. And Joni, you're going to talk to the Tianao Airport report.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Community Board. The report is hereby taken as read. The purpose of this report is to seek agreement by the committee on the proposed deferral of the Tianao Airport loan repayments for the 2021 financial year in response to the potential financial impact of COVID-19 on the affordability of rates in the Fiordland rating area, and to propose the reduction of the Tianao Airport rate from $128 inclusive of GST to $67.69 for the 2021 annual plan, as endorsed by Council at the meeting held on the 27th of April. Thank you.
Would you like me to just add on to that? One of the main reasons I took this proposal to Council was to recognise the decrease and the implications of our tourist industry and the significant effect that will have on Tianao and Manapori. We are quite unique in itself because we were relying on 85% of our visitors being international visitors. So that in itself has a significant impact on our ratepayers. I was looking at numerous ways of how I could assist or come up with ideas as to how I could assist the ratepayers of Tianao Manapori. And one of those thoughts was, and I did discuss this with Madam Chair before I took it to Council, was that should we have a look at the rate that we're paying for the Manapori Airport? And at the moment, it's I think each rate pays about $128 per annum. And what we are looking at, what the proposal is, that the OPEX remains the same because we have ongoing costs at that airport. However, if we could look at suspending the loan repayments for a period of time, that in itself reduces that annual rate component relating to the airport just about half. So that is one way of assisting this community as well. There's a couple other proposals I've got in the pipeline, which I still have to discuss with the chair and also with council. But yeah, every opportunity that I can see that how I can assist this community, that's what I've been doing. So this is part of that, and I'm very pleased to say that it was supported by council at the last council meeting. They could see the logic in that. So it's now really a final sign off by this community board, because this community board has a governance role with respect to that airport.
Okay, thank you, Abel, and thank you, Joni. Does anybody have any questions? No. I think this reduction certainly makes sense. Hopefully everybody understands the implications of this. There will be an amount added onto the loan at the end. But I think it is a positive way for us to move forward in the environment that we're working in at the moment. So can I ask that somebody move the report, please?
I move the recommendations, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. All in favour, please say yes.
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 All right, so that's carried. So the next item is the unbudgeted expenditure for the Manapuri swimming pool. So Kevin isn't in attendance. Do I have somebody that can speak to this report, please? Megan.
I can.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So Manapuri Pool, as explained in the community leadership report, are going through some organisational changes with the hope that the operational agreement will be rejigged and transferred to them. In the meantime, they're in the process of doing some capital works to the pool, namely putting in a solar heating system. So they've done a lot of self-fundraising and they have received some grants, but they are wanting to access some of the funding collected by the board. So this report is just to confirm that.
Fantastic. Thanks, thanks, Megan. I think in terms of some additional input, the agreement here is to contribute $15,000. Initially, if you have a look at the, sorry, in the right place, they had stated the shortfall was about 7,500, but it didn't make any sense not to leave them with any money for operating that pool come next season. So that's the reason that there was a discussion. The 15,000 is available in the reserves. So it makes much more sense to leave them with some money in their bank account, and that we provide the $15,000 so that they can get those capital works done. So can I ask that somebody move that we approve or agree the contribution of $15,000 as unbudgeted expenditure?
Do that.
Thank you, Mary. And a seconder? Thanks, Ryan. Okay, all in favour, please say yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Great. All right. So, Megan, will you speak with Kevin to make that happen? Is that all good?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on then to page 71, we have the naming of the streets in the Kepler Heights subdivision. Hartley, I think you'll be speaking to this one.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I will be. So this report covers off the road naming for a short street in the Kepler Heights Stage 5 development. And as outlined in the report, the street needs to be formally recognised with a name. And also that name, there's some criteria around the naming of it, both in terms of Land Information New Zealand and the Geographical Board guidelines. We received a proposal from the developer for the name of Karen Court after Chris and Helen Karen. This name also features on a name, previous board, or the Te Ana Community Board had a list of preferred names that they'd collated over the years, and this is one of those names. On that basis, our recommendation is for the Community Board to adopt that name, and then we'd, if the Community Board agrees with that, we'd formally notify the developer and arrange for the name to be installed. Street names are required in order to allow for roads or properties to receive their addresses, so the 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. number for various reasons, both postal and for emergency services. I'll largely take the report as being read, but that was probably the key aspects of the report. But happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Hartley. Does anybody have any questions?
If I may, through you, Madam Chair, just a slight concern. I mean, I support the name. However, there's more than one Karen family in this Te Anau, in Te Anau Basin. Will this reflect what we're trying to achieve? That it is named after Chris and Helen Karen. How do we make sure that that is clearly reflected? Just putting it out there. Maybe it's not a concern.
It is a very valid point.
Yeah.
Maybe a plaque at the start of the street as well. Something small.
Yeah. Just so that it's recognised that it is
For Chris and Helen.
for Chris and Helen. They've certainly been here a long time, done a huge amount of work for this community.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure it is recognised for the right Karen. That's all.
Hartley, did the developer have any comments around that, or are you aware of anything, any discussion around that fact?
Pretty much it. No, I'm not aware. This is, I think they do have knowledge of Chris and Helen's contribution, and as such had proposed the name. It's definitely not a name that we've proposed. And I suppose that is just further comment on that. With any naming of the street name, especially as time goes on, there's always that the detail of the actual individuals that it might be named after versus, say, holistically the family from an area. There's always that I suppose, risk over time that gets lost. But I do think it still reflects the name in terms of hence the surname and the contribution the family made as a larger contributor to the community over time. In terms of, it's not something we've done historically in terms of putting a plaque or something similar to recognise the first names of individuals associated with it, other than, I suppose, formally through the report, and we probably need to give that some thought as to if that was what the community board wished, then how that would apply, and would that be a precedent for something going forward? Would we do that with any other names where they relate to specific individuals? I'm wanting to recognise that on every street name that may be named after an individual rather than, say, the family.
It's just, I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but if you've got 3 families living in the same town with the same last name, who puts their hand up?
Could that be something that's put towards the developer and sort of left in their court, really?
Yeah.
As to how they portray that across to the community? I think, through Madam Chair, I think that's a very good idea.
Yep.
Yeah, they're still carrying the Karen name with Karen Scott Contracting, and so that's well known around town. So.
It is. Abel is correct in that one of the criteria previously for naming streets is also been that that the people we name after are deceased and not necessarily living, and that has been something that the community board has had to be mindful of in the past, and we potentially, although we have a number of names on that list, there has been a tendency to consider people that perhaps are no longer with us as opposed to people that are still with us, and to a degree that has helped in the past to avoid some confusion, not necessarily all confusion, but it has helped. So Ryan, I think you know, you may be correct. I think that might be something that we would put back to the developer.
I think it's a good idea. Makes sense.
On that basis, do we leave this report on the table, or
No, I think we can move it, Madam Chair.
still move it?
Yep, I think we've signalled quite clearly that we put it back to the developer. I mean, I still think Karen Court is a good name for it, and it recognises Chris and Helen, and there may be some way of acknowledging that fact, and I'm sure there's some way of doing that.
Okay.
So on those bases, I'm happy to move it, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kramer. I don't think, just looking at the requirements on this report, that we need to make any changes to it. Unless you want us to specifically note that we would wish that the developer be
Advised.
or advised of the concerns that we have around ensuring recognition for the appropriate parties.
That's all it takes. Yep.
Yeah.
It's just noted. I don't think we need a recommendation or anything like that. It's just noted, and I'm sure Hartley will take that back. He's been party to these discussions.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for moving, Abel. Do I have a seconder for that report then, please?
Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. All in favour, please say yes.
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 Right. Okay. And then moving on then to the Community Partnership Fund report. Sorry, I'm too far, which is on page 77. So this is our final report for the afternoon. Megan, I'll open that up to you. I know we've had some discussions on this already.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So before the lockdown, you might all remember that I came to one of your workshops and workshopped the potential criteria that the Fiordland Community Board would use for the new Community Partnership Fund. So we've now done that with every community board, and now we've got formal reports. This is just formalising the criteria that you agreed upon. So yeah, I mean, some of the general principles in there are that the Fiordland Community Board will allow any organisation of any legal entity to apply regardless of their legal status. They must have alignment with the Fiordland Community Futures Plan. They must show some degree of self-contribution or fundraising. Funding for individuals will not be considered, nor will applications for salaries, catering or room hire, and nor will funding for pecuniary gain. So I'll take it as read, and feel free to fire away any questions or potential changes you might have.
All right, thank you for that. As you all know, we already have discussed this. So are there any additional comments that anybody like to make? Or are we all happy? We're all happy with this set of criteria now? Happy?
One thing I would like to add is that you guys did this first, and actually a number of community boards asked to see your criteria to help them decide their own. And so you were a template. So thank you very much for that.
Well, Hannah, we'll just take it a little bit further. There's got to be commission on that. Now, come on. Thank you, Megan.
No pecuniary gain.
For the community board, not personally, for the community board.
Yes. Oh, well, that's good to know that we were a template. All right. I think then we can ask that somebody move this report. Then we've confirmed this set of criteria. Certainly looking forward to seeing the applications for this partnership fund moving forwards. I think, you know, hopefully it will bring some exciting projects before us, and there'll be some really neat activity for our town and our district, or towns and district. So, if somebody move the report, please.
Right.
Thank you, Ryan. And a seconder?
Yep.
Paul back. Thank you, Mary. Okay,
Question
all in
on
favour, please say yes.
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 All right, so that's carried. Great, fantastic. Thank you, Megan, for working through with us on that. It's good to have that set of criteria identified, because then we'll be able to start to get that out into the wider network as to what the criteria are for application. So we'll certainly look forward to that first round of applications. All right. So that does bring us to the end of our reports. Does anybody have any additional comments that they would like to make before we close the meeting?
Yeah, just back to your chairperson report there, I just missed my chance to have a word there. Just following up on what you touched on, and Abel and Gary both touched on, promoting Southland as a whole. Over the last 7 weeks, we've noticed old Kelvin Davis, the Minister of Tourism, is extremely lethargic, not doing anything really, almost like he's been shocked with this whole COVID scenario. It'd be nice to know what Great South and Destination Fiordland are doing on a promotional sort of aspect, and how they're advertising Southland as a whole. Like, are they putting it in the ODT, the Christchurch Press, and can we see what they're actually doing? Because at this point, I don't really know how we're being marketed. And I think now's the time to just really be pushing Southland.
I can probably answer that in part. Great South and Destination Fiordland are working together. There is a campaign that's been released, and
I'm sure they are, but do I have to look into their forums to find it, or is there any way we can see how they're promoting that's not on their website?
It's definitely on their website. But you mean in terms of the wider visibility?
Yeah, I mean, are people going to have to search for them to get this promotion, or is it actually out there in public forums, Facebook, papers? Are they actually advertising Southland?
That is a very good question. I
The way
probably
we use the internet, people don't always dive for that information. It needs to be shoved in their face.
Yeah.
Like Queenstown's doing.
Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair. Well, we're sort of stepping it out in, I think, about 3 different stages. So the first one was the one that's operating at the moment, which is because of level 3, it was getting out there, supporting your local businesses now that you're able to kind of get out of the house, and that runs for a little bit longer. Then there is the one which I think must be kicking off this week or very shortly, which is the come and see Southland, but also for Southlanders to support the neighbouring regions as well. So it's because it's being run as a combination of the RTOs working together with Tourism New Zealand, which has turned its focus around onto obviously internal and domestic tourism. And then there's a third aspect of that, which I think is intended to come out sort of in the next few months, probably more towards August. So, encourage you to contact them directly if you want to have the specific details. But they're doing it that way as more opportunities roll out, that they also know where the operators are and what sort of deals or things that they can promote. I think they were also part of this second one with having Southlanders through the social media type aspect, even sort of 10 seconds or so of what's my favourite place in Southland, etc., to try and sort of promote some of those places that aren't just Milford or or whatever. So giving a much better picture.
Yeah, there's I've just jumped into some information I have. There's probably several ways that we can receive this. Firstly, you can sign up to Great South Tourism newsletter and get the tourism sector update. Simon's correct. There is it's a hashtag MySouthland, or rediscover hashtag MySouthland. That's to Together Southland campaign, and It is on social media through the Southland NZ Facebook channel or Facebook page. So you might want to jump on there. One thing I would say is that there is a forum, if anybody is able to attend it on Friday, which is a regional tourism restart webinar, which is being run by, don't know, I can't remember if it's Great South, but it does involve the Minister of Tourism. It involves Graham Budd from Great South, Madeline Peacock from DF, and a couple of other people from our neighbouring regions. So there is that restart webinar. If anybody wants that link, they can get in touch with me and attend that webinar if they want to. It's at 2 o'clock on Friday.
I can also add to that, Madam Chair, I know that Great South have been working on the Rediscover Southland. I've just been forwarded some information. It's a Southland local and domestic visitor campaign post-COVID-19, and it's all about Rediscover Southland. Southland New Zealand, in partnership with Destination Fiordland, plans to launch a local domestic visitor campaign to stimulate local economy, create an emotive connection and encourage travel across the region. The campaign is designed for community and business support and participation as possible. What I'll do is I'll flick it through to you guys, because then you can exactly see what their plan has been, and that'll give you a bit more assistance as well, Ben, that clearly identify their campaign schedule and their strategy, so how it all links together. But yeah, it probably hasn't been advertised as much as it possibly could be, but I'll get it to you after the meeting.
Right. I know very well they would be working hard, but it's just good to see actually how it's getting out there to the Canterbury, to the West Coast, to the Dunedin, you know what I mean?
Yep, I know exactly what you mean. Yep, understand you. Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, thanks for raising that point. Has anybody got anything else they'd like to add? No? All right. Well, look, thank you, everybody. Your time is much appreciated, and we will see you soon. So we have a workshop week tomorrow, which will sort of delve down further into LTP. But in the meantime, thank you, everybody, for attending. I'll declare the meeting closed. It's
Thank you.
4:35.